What's going on, you guys? This is DerekJ Speaks, and we are here to talk about WWE Money in the Bank 2025 live from the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles, California, where the fans were asking for it for an entire week after the bombshell news of R-Truth being released from WWE, or at least WWE not renewing his contract. The outcry on social media from fans and other people in the industry alike was very loud. We had pockets of fans throughout the week at the live shows chanting "We want truth." Even during the main event, there were chants of "We want truth." And at the end of the night, in the closing moments of that main event, the people got R-Truth as John Cena had Cody Rhodes down, knocked him out with the championship belt. R-Truth runs into the ring. Well, at first we didn't know it was him. It was a masked man who tackled Cena down to the mat and was throwing down punches on him. He takes off the hoodie, takes off the mask, and reveals himself to be R-Truth, and got one of the biggest pops of the entire night. And he took the championship belt, clocked Cena right in the head with it. He leapt over the barricade, went through the crowd, and Cody Rhodes recovered. He hit a crossroads on John Cena, and he pinned John Cena to win the tag team main event match. Him and World Heavyweight Champion Jey Uso defeating John Cena and Logan Paul. The match itself overall was fine. The standard tag match. The fans were into it for the star power, and you had some big moments. At one point, Logan Paul hit a big acai moonsault from the ring out onto Jey Uso through a table, the announce table that is. We had a little bit of dissension between John Cena and Logan Paul at one point earlier on in the match, but what it really all came down to was that R-Truth return. Now, the fans were very upset hearing about the news of R-Truth being let go by WWE. You had a lot of very passionate fans coming out expressing their displeasure with WWE and TKO over that move, looking at just dollar signs and not looking at company loyalty and all that kind of stuff. Whatever. But you also had a few takes of people talking about how R-Truth is the most important person in the company and how Vince McMahon never would have released R-Truth, and he understood loyalty except for when, he fired over a dozen, maybe even double that amount of people during a pandemic, and has let go of numerous people and has done various salacious, disgusting, disturbing things. But yeah, the one thing he would never have done is release R-Truth. Yeah, we had a lot of awful takes, but a lot of the takes regarding WWE and TKO this past week, a lot mixed opinion, but also very true things being said. So, was the move here to bring R-Truth back? I guess the innate, reflex as a wrestling fan is to think, well, this whole thing was a work from the very beginning. And I'm sure you're going to see a lot of people think that. Maybe that was the case. Maybe as soon as I upload this video, news will come out saying the whole thing was a work from the word go. I don't really get the purpose of that, but if that's the case, then so be it. I personally believe this was just a response. We've seen this before where WWE releases someone, or they let someone go, they fire someone, they make some kind of move that gets enough of a loud backlash from the fans that they have to pivot and they have to change course and they have to rewrite and change the decision they made. Hell, Cody Rhodes is a perfect example of that, the man who won the main event tonight. So R-Truth coming back, and if you noticed, R-Truth was not out there. He wasn't dancing. He wasn't smiling. He was a very serious R-Truth who took out John Cena. So I assume they're going to head in that direction with him. I don't know. For all we know, R-Truth, I mean, they didn't release him necessarily. They just said they're not going to renew his contract. So could this be a case where they brought him back to TV to continue this angle with him and Cena, and it's gonna end with R-Truth being taken out officially, properly, and that is the way to write off R-Truth. So instead of unceremoniously firing him and banning wrestlers from wearing his merchandise on television, they're gonna bring him back to TV, put him in a storyline, and use him to get Cena even more heat, and that's how they finish him off. I could very easily see that being the case. So all this cheerful noise and all that could all be for naught. But my positive mindset here thinks that maybe, just maybe, this is a sign of WWE righting a wrong, and they realized the mistake they made, and they brought R-Truth back, and they wanted to bring him back in a big way since the fans loved him so much. It's funny how a lot of these same fans were the ones complaining about R-Truth facing John Cena at Saturday Night's Main Event in the first place, and him getting involved in the main event of Backlash last month. And so now that makes 2 big pay-per-views in a row where R-Truth was involved in the outcome of the main event. So take that to mean what you will. And if Truth is back, I assume him and Cena's stuff will continue, and if this means a more serious R-Truth based on what we saw from him on the show, then that's good. But lost in all of this is the fact that Cody Rhodes, he wrestled his first match back since WrestleMania, and he pinned John Cena. You have to assume that's going to set him up for a championship match in the future. Could it be a Night of Champions? Could they wait until SummerSlam? I feel like there's a very good chance we're going to get that championship rematch at Saturday night's Main Event on July 12th. Good God. July 12th. The same day as the AEW All-In show, but of course Saturday night's Main Event will be airing that night. WWE just encroaching on AEW's territory that weekend, and they're going to want a lot of eyeballs on their product with Evolution on Sunday. There's a very good chance their NXT show is going to go head-to-head with All In, and they have that night, Saturday night's Main Event in Atlanta. And there's a very good chance that Cody, the hometown boy, might get his rematch with John Cena on that show. It just depends on what kind of direction they want to go in with it. But Cody pinning Cena obviously is going to lead directly into a rematch between the two of them. It's just a matter of when are we going to get it and what's the outcome of that going to be. And as for Jey Uso is all geared up to prepare for a World Heavyweight Championship match against Gunther this upcoming Monday night, June 9th, in Phoenix, Arizona. And very curious what the outcome of that championship match is going to be, especially now that we know who won the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. We had Andrade, Penta, LA Knight, Solo Sikoa, El Grande Americano, and Seth freaking Rollins going to war in this match, and it was Seth Rollins who walked away with the victory, and he is Mr. Money in the Bank after what overall was a pretty damn good ladder match. Nothing overly special about it, in my opinion. I mean, you got 6 guys out there. One of the guys in there pulled double duty on this day. El Grande Americano, Chad Gable, of course, he wrestled in the main event of that Worlds Collide show earlier in the day at the Kia Forum. And then here he was again later in the night in a mask and a ladder match. So hats off to all 6 guys here. They busted their asses. They went to war. There was a lot of brutal spots that took place during the course of that main event match, or that ladder match, I should say. But in the end, it was a Seth Rollins victory. Now, it wasn't an easy win. He did get his guys out there to back him up, Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker, and they laid waste to a lot of the other people in the match. And then out came Solo's crew, that being Jacob Fatu and JC Mateo, of course, formerly known as Jeff Cobb. They came out there. Mateo was taken out by Braun Breaker, a spear through the timekeeper's barricade. And then in the ring, Jacob Fatu took out Bronson Reed with a pop-up Samoan drop. Honestly, one of the best spots of the entire match. And it was between two guys who were not even officially in the match itself. And then suicide dive to the outside, took out Bronson Reed. And Jacob Fatu helped Solo back into the ring. He propped up a new ladder, a fresh ladder for him. The two hugged, and he was standing guard as Solo Sikoa climbed up the ladder. And then as he was getting to the top, hand on the briefcase, Jacob Fatu grabs the foot of Solo. The fans are going crazy, and Jacob shouts up at him, "I hate you, Solo." After months and months, after almost a year, because it was about a year ago, at least it was June of 2024, when Jacob Fatu officially made his debut on SmackDown and joined Solo's bloodline. So after months and months of hearing Jacob Fatu saying, "I love you, Solo," the dissension was there. It was building up. And then after this past week's episode of SmackDown, where Solo was basically talking crap about Jacob Fatu behind his back, and Fatu overheard it, that old trope, we got the moment here, and Fatu took him down, laid him out with a suplex, hit him with a big moonsault, and took him to the outside, got him on the, he was standing on the ring apron with him, and he hit a spinning Solo off of the apron through a ladder bridge. So now, big moment here. We finally get the breakdown between these two. Guess the question remains of who's challenging him first. Is it going to be JC Mateo taking on Fatu for the U.S. title, or is it going to be Solo and Fatu? We'll see, and we'll see if one of them beats him for that championship. I have to imagine they will, and they'll prolong this feud even more, and then it'll build to Fatu ultimately getting his belt back. So that could be an early SummerSlam match, one of the two nights. We have Night of Champions coming up. I could see him going through JC Mateo first, and then eventually facing Solo Sikoa. Solo beats him, and then we get a couple of matches between the two of them until Fatu beats him, takes back the title, and moves on, and they go their separate ways. But as for the winner of this match, it was Seth Rollins again, and he did so by knocking off LA Knight, who, out of everyone in this match, people, their hearts were really pulling for LA Knight, but a lot of people, their head, their brain, myself included, knew Seth Rollins was the man to win this match. And let me say this, storyline-wise, for the purpose of the story that they have been telling with Seth Rollins and the newly modern age dangerous alliance with him and Paul Heyman and Breaker and Reed running roughshod over TV, Rollins standing strong at the end of Raw, standing strong over his opponents at the end of SmackDown. The man has been very power hungry since WrestleMania. It makes sense that he has the briefcase and he can cash in and win that world championship. I understand that it plays into the story, but I also understand why a lot of fans so far aren't very happy about the fact that LA Knight, for the third straight year, walks into a Money in the Bank ladder match and loses. This is a man who was one of the hottest acts in the company a couple of years ago. They finally took a chance on him. They started giving him a little bit of a push, and they pushed him right into the brick wall known as Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, and he fell to the Bloodline, and he's been in that Bloodline vortex off and on for the past couple of years, facing Solo and other members. He's been in rough feuds here and there. He had a good program with Logan Paul and won the U.S. title from him, but then he was given absolutely nothing to do with said U.S. title. He lost it to Nakamura, who they did even less with. Then he won it back from Nakamura, only to lose it yet again to Jacob Fatu at WrestleMania. He has suffered several big losses. He has been made to look like a fool on many occasions, and yet the fans still cheer for him. You heard it tonight. You heard it in that match. You heard it during his entrance. You heard it throughout different parts of the match. LA Knight still super over. Now, of course, they were in LA tonight, so that makes sense, but whether they're in LA, whether they're in Chicago, whether they're in Atlanta, whether they're in Tampa, whether they're in Cleveland, it doesn't matter where they're at. LA Knight typically, on average, gets one of the biggest ovations out of anybody. And just looking at the lay of the land in this match, I understand the story they're telling with Seth Rollins, but Rollins and his quest for power and the World Championship on Raw could have happened without him needing to win the briefcase. He didn't need that. But I will say, if you're going to do the Money in the Bank ladder match, you should give the victory to someone who you actually plan on giving the championship to, or actually plan on putting in world championship programs. And it is very clear that Triple H and his creative team have no plans whatsoever of putting LA Knight anywhere near a world championship. At least that's the impression that I get. What else am I supposed to think after the man has failed in this match for 3 years in a row and has done virtually nothing for the past several months on TV? And here, in a great opportunity to shake things up, go in a different direction, and strap the rocket to someone who the fans are really into and could really use that moment, they didn't do it. And that's a bit of a bummer. I already saw it. A lot of die-hard LA Knight fans, they're very upset, and I can't even blame them. It sucks. I was hoping that Seth would pull out a win, that LA Knight would pull out a win. Hell, I was even pulling for Penta at different points. Penta in this match, who I knew had no chance of winning, there were different points where he came pretty close and the fans were really into it. They liked the idea of Penta winning. And you know what? Penta, as Mr. Money in the Bank, definitely would have been something new and different. Seth Rollins, the man who won the briefcase 11 years ago and cashed it in and won the WWE Championship 10 years ago, is not exactly brand new and exciting and fresh, but it is the direction that they're heading in. And now, there's a very good chance that Jey Uso-Gunther match coming up this week on Raw, June 9th, will very likely get interrupted by Seth Rollins cashing in Money in the Bank. And it has to be said that Seth Rollins won this briefcase with ease, and there was no sign of Sami Zayn, there was no sign of CM Punk, there was no sign of Roman Reigns. You had Sami on television a week prior talking to CM Punk and telling him how important it was to make sure Seth does not get that briefcase, how catastrophic it would be for the Monday Night Raw brand if Seth Rollins were to win that briefcase. And then Punk fails to even qualify for the match, and none of these guys appear on the actual show. And I only mentioned Roman because Rollins mentioned Roman, talking about how he's off on the island of irrelevancy. He's elsewhere. He put him in the dirt. He put him aside. He's done. He's history. Well, that kind of leads one to think that Roman Reigns is going to come back, and nothing. Now, obviously, they didn't advertise Roman Reigns or CM Punk to appear on this show, but why we're talking about story, right? How storyline-wise it makes sense for Seth Rollins to win the briefcase. Why storyline-wise would CM Punk, Sami Zayn, at least the two of them, why would they not get involved in this match and try to screw over Seth Rollins, even if it didn't work? Even if they failed in that mission, at least they tried. And I can only assume the reason we didn't get them on this show to prevent Seth Rollins from winning the briefcase, and now he won, and they didn't stop it from happening. The only thing I can think of is either one, these baby faces are stupid, which WWE is not immune to booking their baby faces to look stupid. So it's either that or we're getting another failed cash in, which is going to make people even happier. They already don't like the idea that Seth won and LA Knight lost again. And now you're going to give Seth the briefcase only for him to cash in whenever it is, whether it's on Raw, whether it's Night of Champions, whenever it is. He's going to cash in, and that's when CM Punk comes in and screws him over. And that's when Roman Reigns comes back and screws him over. And we get yet another year of a failed Money in the Bank cash in. Now, I won't pitch much of a fit over that because, quite frankly, I can do without the whole Money in the Bank concept in general. So them having someone win the briefcase and fail at their cash in, they did it last year with Drew McIntyre getting screwed over by CM Punk. A lot of people hated that. I didn't because it fit into the story. If they did it again this year, it would be very lazy that they would do it 2 years in a row, especially if it did involve CM Punk. But story-wise, whatever. That's what they want to do with it. I don't care for the briefcase anyway. But enough people do. I know Triple H doesn't. I know that report came out that Triple H actually does not like the briefcase. So maybe that is very true. And they're going to use this as a gimmick to sell tickets to a show. And then they're going to give the briefcase to Rollins only for him to get screwed out of it when he cashes in. It's very possible. Do I think that's going to happen? I don't. I think that there is a very good chance that Seth Rollins is walking out of Phoenix this Monday as the World Heavyweight Champion, and he will eventually defend that championship against possibly CM Punk, possibly Roman Reigns, and one way or another, Rollins is going to be World Heavyweight Champion at some point soon, whether it is the result of the Money in the Bank briefcase or not. So, there you go. But Rollins was not the only Money in the Bank winner on this show. We had a women's Money in the Bank winner and a women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Rhea Ripley, Roxanne Perez, Julia, Stephanie Vaquer, Alexa Bliss, and Naomi. One of the most star-studded lineups in a women's Money in the Bank ladder match in history. And this was the match, the one match heading into this show that I was the most excited about, that I was the most interested in seeing due to the characters involved and the star power of this match, which far and away surpassed that of the men's ladder match. This match, much like the men's, was very good. There were some rough spots in there, a few botches here and there, but again, much like the men, these are 6 women, 6 of the top biggest names in the women's division. Even though some of them have only been on the main roster for a few weeks now, you have some of the most talented women's wrestlers in the world in this match. The likes of Stephanie Vaquer, the likes of Julia, and Rhea Ripley, and all these women who are in this match and who get these huge reactions. And they helped boost this match up to feel far more important. And of course, one of the biggest spots of the entire match and of the entire night, we see Stephanie Vaquer hit the Devil's Kiss move, and she hit it on Rhea Ripley, which alone already excited many male and female fans for that matter. But she hit it on Rhea on a ladder bridge, which was definitely one of the biggest highlights of the entire night. But the closing moments of this match saw Rhea Ripley and Alexa Bliss going at it on top of the ladder, only for them to be knocked off by Naomi, who scaled up the ladder, retrieved the briefcase, and Naomi is Miss Money in the Bank for 2025. This is a woman who has been in this company for years. Of course, she left and then had a nice run for herself in TNA. Then she came back in 2024. Since then, she hasn't had the most stellar run. She's lost far more than she's won. She's been in big championship matches and she's failed a lot of them. She had this feud with Jade Cargill start up with the whole whodunit angle and turned heel. She's been doing great work, but then she went to WrestleMania and she lost again. So time and time again, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. She's had a championship victory here and there, but that was years and years ago, man. We're going back like 8 years since the last time she's held a singles championship in this company. for the people who want to throw out, nepotism and, oh, The Rock called in for a favor and all that kind of bullshit. Naomi's worked very hard. It doesn't matter who she's married to. It doesn't matter what family she's a part of. She has worked very, very hard. She's been a very giving person. She's been very giving of herself, putting others over, helping other people look good, and has been laid out looking up at the lights, taking pinfalls left and right for over a year now. It was about time that she got her big moment, and this was it. And it was very cool to see her get that moment. It was very cool to see her get interviewed on the post show with Big E sitting right next to her, the only two black Money in the Bank winners in history. That was very cool. And you could see how emotional she was over that. But she's still a heel, and she's doing great work as a heel. Proceed with caution, all that kind of stuff. She's doing great. And I'm very happy to see her get the win here. I wouldn't have hated it if some of the other women in this match had won, but to me, she was the biggest name that made the most sense. So she wins it, and I can very well see her cashing in on Tiffany Stratton at some point in the future. In fact, I'm looking ahead towards SummerSlam. We could very easily see a scenario where we get a women's championship match of some kind involving Naomi and Bianca Belair. And that story is still very fresh. Bianca's still injured. She still has the broken fingers that she's dealing with, but I imagine she won't be out too much longer. This stuff with Naomi and Jade is still not resolved, although now they're teasing stuff with Jade and Charlotte, so that could be a direction for that Evolution show. So maybe Jade's left out of the equation. Maybe she's brought back in. So I'm guessing come SummerSlam, Naomi by that point will have cashed in Money in the Bank, and she could be champion, and we see her defending against Bianca, or maybe even Bianca and Jade in a triple threat match. Either way, very easily can see Naomi winning that championship at some point soon this year. Speaking of women winning championships, we had Becky Lynch capturing the Women's Intercontinental Championship against Lyra Valkyria on this show in a match that was very good, just not as good as their previous match at Backlash, which was great. Probably the best match of the night on that particular show. This match here, I don't know if I would call it the best match of the night. Maybe of the non-Money in the Bank ladder matches, it probably was the best one out of all of those, which, I mean, seeing its competition, that's not saying much, but still, yeah, it probably was the best one. But the ladder matches, to me, they were about even. I don't know if one was better than the other. Even the big, star-studded women's match, it wasn't fantastic or anything like that. It was very good. Again, the work was there, the effort was there, and they killed each other, and that was, kudos and hats off and respect to them. But as a match, as a Money in the Bank ladder match, it comes a point where you get kind of numb to certain spots and certain things and stunts that they do in these matches. When you've seen one, you've seen them all. I remember last year's women's match actually being a little bit better than the one we got this year. And there was a certain car crash presentation with that match where it looked pretty rough and ugly, but it was still very entertaining to see. We didn't really get that in this match, or the men's match for that matter, but, they were still fine for what they were. But again, for the non-ladder matches, Becky and Lyra easily had the best match on this show. We had various chants throughout this match. We Want Truth was one of the chants during this match, and, they got what they wanted at the end of the night, so that's good for them. But there were a lot of Let's Go Becky, Becky Sucks chants. Not a whole lot of Lyra Valkyria chants, though. And Lyra has really stepped up over the course of this feud. Her promo work has improved. We've gotten to see her come out of her shell in ring-wise, and the match she had with Becky was easily the best match that she's had at Backlash, and even on this show, this match with Becky was probably the second best match she's ever had, followed by the third best match that she's ever had, which was probably also against Becky Lynch. That was back in their NXT days. So it's been good as far as that's concerned, but I knew from the beginning of this feud that this would head in the direction where Becky Lynch would beat her for that Intercontinental Championship. They caught me off guard with giving Lyra the win at Backlash, but with the rematch being announced and the stipulations they added to it, I had a feeling that Becky was going to walk out of this show with that championship, and she certainly did. After a series of roll-up counters between the two of them, Becky caught Lyra with a roll-up, and with the referee's back turned, she got a handful of tights right at the end. At least that's what Michael Cole was screaming about, and that gave Becky the win. So now Becky is only the second ever Women's Intercontinental Champion, and per the stipulations agreed upon heading into the match, Lyra was forced to raise Becky's hand. And she did that, and she raised it facing all sides of the ring. Becky even yelled at her to put the championship around her waist, which Lyra didn't need to do, but she did it. And instead of walking away looking like a complete chump, she instead just looked like a sore loser by beating up Becky Lynch and hitting her with a German suplex and hitting her with the Nightwing to close out the segment. So, again, she didn't look dumb, but she did look like a sore loser. But oh well, you can argue that Becky was humiliating her here and degrading her. But again, Lyra could have just not done it. All she had to do was raise her arm. She could have just walked away. There was no contract that forced her to stay out there as long as she did, but it is what it is. Still surprised we didn't get a Bayley appearance. Maybe we'll get it this upcoming Raw. I imagine that that's the next big match for Becky. Before they go right into another rematch with Becky and Lyra, I imagine we will get Becky and Bayley at some point. Maybe they're saving that for Evolution as well. I don't know, but I imagine that'll be the next big feud for her. And heading into this show, there were only 4 matches announced, and even up till about 4 or 5 hours before the show, there were still only 4 matches announced for this show, which is pathetic. But then at the Worlds Collide show, they ran an angle which set up another match to add onto this show, which was a men's Intercontinental Championship match with Dominic Mysterio defending against Triple A's Octagon Jr. This had no business taking place on this show. You could have taken this away, wouldn't have made a dent, wouldn't have improved the show, wouldn't have dragged the show down. It would have been absolutely nothing, because this match was absolutely nothing. I don't even think it went a full 5 minutes. Dominic won with a 619 and a splash after Liv Morgan distracted the referee and Octagon Jr., who hit some impressive moves in this match. He was far more impressive in the trios match that he had earlier in the day at the Worlds Collide show, which led him to getting this match in the first place, but this match didn't need to take place. In fact, if you wanted to shoot an angle where you set up a Dominic Mysterio match on this show, out of all the guys who competed earlier in the day at that show, I would have gone with the Iguana guy, Mr. Iguana, because he was super over at Worlds Collide, and they showed a bunch of AAA guys in the crowd, and Mr. Iguana got one of the biggest pops of anybody on the show. So if you wanted to put somebody in the spot to give a quick little fun match with Dominic, I would have gone with him. But, oh well. Again, Dom won. This was nothing. But again, it did not really make or break this show. The show, top to bottom, was a fine show. I'm not going to get too upset over the fact that some of the people who I wanted to win did not win, like LA Knight, who is once again a failure, and will probably still get big reactions. I will say this, LA Knight needs to get off of SmackDown, because there is no future for this man on that SmackDown brand. If he continues to stay on that show, all that is left for him is constant rematches with Solo Sikoa and his crew. There's nothing of substance for him left on that show. Not even Jacob Fatu, who now has to deal with Solo and JC Mateo. He has Damian Priest breathing down his neck. Drew McIntyre is off injured. Who else is there? Who else is left for him to feud with? Another reason why he should have won Money in the Bank and moved to Raw and go after the World Championship. He should still move to Raw anyway. Move him over to Raw. Put him in the World Championship scene on that show. Or if you want him to feud with Dominic over the Intercontinental Championship, I don't care. Move him off of SmackDown. This man desperately needs a change of scenery. Don't just add other people to SmackDown for him to lose to. Move him over to Raw and give him a fresh new crop of talent for him to lose to on a Red show. So there you go. But yeah, top to bottom, the show was fine. I have no issues with it. And with them hyping up this upcoming week's Raw as much as they are with the World Championship match, the start of the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments with a bunch of fatal four-way matches upcoming, they announced that Nikki Bella is going to appear on the show. So I imagine that's going to lead into some hype for that Evolution show. So we got some big stuff coming up. So I might look at that show. And depending on what happens with that World Championship match, we might be getting another review from me. And we'll see if the events of Money in the Bank will directly impact the outcome of that Jey Uso-Gunther match. So long as I don't have to witness Gunther losing to Jey Uso clean again. I lived with it and I suffered through it the first time. I don't need to see it again. It's bad enough we're getting the match for, what is it, a sixth time now? Which I was not asking for. But if they insist on doing this match, please do not make Jey Uso beat Gunther clean again. I can't take it. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see how that match goes down. We'll see what the finish is, and depending on what that outcome is, I might be here to bring you a review. If it ain't worth anything, or if something bad happens, I'm not going to talk about it. So we'll play the waiting game with that. But outside of that, that is it from me here. You know the drill. If you like what you hear, like what you see, like button, subscribe, follow on Twitter/X at DerekJ Speaks. Thanks for listening, and until next time, check you later.